Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, for 30 minutes.
Forgive me, Madam Speaker, as we get ourselves all set up here. It's the nature of when you never know when the other speakers are finishing. Madam Speaker, we're going to actually sort of walk through a couple things we did last week. We're going to do it again because I got the feeling no one was listening. We had a joint economic hearing today, which, I'm blessed to be, we call it the vice chair. We rotate the chairmanship back and forth between the House and the Senate. And have you ever had these occasions where in the hearing, everyone knows the truth, but no one's allowed to actually say it out loud? And those of us who go and say it out loud sort of get fussed at? Well, as my father used to say to me, screw them. We're going to actually have something unique around here. We're going to tell the truth. First off, had my heart broken. If I have a Bloomberg reporter, this morning you broke my heart. I was listening to one of the newsreaders, and they go, well, the U.S. is going to default on maybe in the beginning of June. Okay, once again, someone go get your financial dictionary. Default is when you do not pay the interest on your bonds. 30% of our spending is borrowed. That basically means 70% we have receipts, income, tax revenues. We have plenty of cash to cover the interest on our bonds. Now, that doesn't mean there's not disharmony, unhappiness for that 30% that wants a check. But if I hear one more idiot around here, we're going to have a default. That's not the definition of default. Matter of fact, there used to be a Treasury Secretary under Lou, and he and I went around and around on this, and we finally came to an agreement that we would clean up our language. We'll call this would actually be default, not paying interest on your bonds. And we created this magic term called a technical default. That's when we don't send the check out to the worker for the agency, or that goes out late. But that isn't default. The financial markets care about U.S. sovereigns having their consistent cash flow because the fact of the matter is that is the basis of much of the world economy. We will never default, even if you pass the debt ceiling. Got to stop making things up around here. And I was going to bring in the charts of the cash flow and showing what happens in mid-June tax receipts and how that is a quarterly spike and may produce another 30 days and what other extraordinary measures have capacity. But I realized no one's actually listening to the facts anymore. So I thought we would try something else. If I get another person from the left who basically comes up and goes, we should have a clean debt ceiling. Really? Okay. Walk us through when you've controlled this body. Are you controlled the votes in the Senate? Is that what you asked for? Well, the fact of the matter, if we go back to 2017, when they didn't actually control the body, but they had enough votes to extort things in the Senate, they required about $15 billion of additional spending, and they still voted against it. But how about 2019? You remember Wayback Machine? 2019, way back, oh no, that was only a couple years ago. 2019, Speaker Pelosi, I won't give President Trump that increase on the debt ceiling without raising the spending caps and a cash spend. So the cash spend was $324 billion, plus functionally another $300 billion on that by raising spending caps. That's a clean debt ceiling? Now understand, what the Democrats wanted was more spending. They always want more spending. And we're trying to bring some fiscal sanity. But come on. If there's any reporters out there, if there's anyone who wants to just sort of tell the basic story of how this place actually works, stop running around these hallways saying, are you supporting default? Come on. You know, you may be a hardcore leftist, but at least the public deserves some of the basic facts. Because we're in real trouble. We are in such real trouble. So let's actually walk through. Washington, D.C., Congress is almost incapable of adult thinking conversation. I used to joke here, no one owns a calculator. Daddy works, when I speak to my little girl, who I want to be a math major, Daddy works in a math-free zone. And she used to think that was funny until she started to realize it's probably true. But we're only willing to do hard things when there's a stressor. You've finished your budget appropriations, you're at the end of the year, you're trying to see, oh, we're just going to do a continuing resolution, which just means we can keep spending tomorrow what we spent yesterday, but you got to get a vote for that new authorization, or we're up against the debt ceiling. Remember, almost the only times this place has ever done something adult-like on policy in regards to spending debt deficits is when we've been up against debt limits. You know, I mean, how many times do we have to show these boards? How many of you remember Grand Rudman, and then the next Grand Rudman, and the Bush tax increases? Remember, those tax increases were part of a deal with the Democrats back, what was that? 91, 92, those. Oh, actually, 1990, I could just read read my board. But you look at these things when there was major policy sets. They came because of a stressor, and that stressor was the debt ceiling. Yet, maybe that's why the left is so terrified of an honest conversation here. We're borrowing, my latest calculation, if I go from the day President Biden was sworn in till now, my best calculation is we're borrowing about $51,000 a second during that time. $51,000 a second. And understand, in 9 years, we're borrowing over $90,000 a second. Do you understand the wheels are coming off? And for some reason, my brothers and sisters on the left don't want to have an honest conversation about it. I don't know if you get votes or that's how they find love, but when they hand out trillions of dollars and they say crazy things, well, the tax reform you all did in 2017, even though by the fourth quarter of the next year, tax receipts were higher than they were before tax reform. Yet, the bill they passed there, Orwellian name Inflation Reduction Acts, you've seen the new scoring. They told the American people, oh, it'll be under $300 billion of handouts to green energy. Fine. Okay, lock that in. But instead, we now have, Goldman Sachs and others coming saying, nope, looks like the number could be 1.2 trillion. Think about that. 1.2 trillion in direct sort of grants, compared to tax reform in somewhat almost the same bracket of spending that was about growing the economy, bringing repatriation of businesses back, fastest movement of economic growth during that economic period, closing of income inequality, food insecurity, just completely different visions of the world. So one more time, why do some of us care so much about telegraphing to the markets? Remember, the world debt markets, we are borrowing so much money. That $51,000 a second, that adds up to what? Like $4.5 billion a day, every single day. We are consuming much of the borrowable, lendable capital from the entire world. We are chewing up so much of the world's capital that other parts of the world are slowing down because they don't have investment capital to build a new bridge or start a new business in other sides of the world. Do understand the scale of what the United States is doing. And if we do not telegraph to those debt markets that are choosing to collect capital from your retirement, to people from all over the world, if we do not telegraph to them we're taking our debt seriously. You expect someone to go buy a 30-year U.S. bond at what? Today, that's what, about 3.869 or something like that. I was looking at one of the postings earlier. You're going to buy a U.S. bond under 4% and believe you're going to get value for 30 years when the debt explodes, because at the end of 30 years, U.S. sovereign debt is going to be close to $130 trillion. What will inflation be like when you've borrowed that much money? The only way we would survive is you got to inflate like crazy, wipe out the value of all your savings, wipe out the value of that bond. So, how many of you, let's go in the Wayback Machine, 2011, U.S. sovereign debt got a one-tick downgrade. Standard & Poor's came in and said, nope, you guys are AA+. I remember the Biden administration just being enraged. How dare you do this? And a bunch of the folks, liars, a number of the folks who wrote about it ran around saying, well, this is because of the debt ceiling. No, it wasn't. If anyone reads, now it's not just a letter, it's an entire report from Standard & Poor's, but some of the takeaways from it, it's because we did not provide a credible path that we were serious about taking on our debt. And the funny thing is, there's a paragraph in the report. Remember, this is 2011. The political brinkmanship of recent months highlights what we see as America's governance and policymakers become less stable. This is 2011. Do you think we're better off today? Do you think we're taking our debt more seriously today? Because do understand, I think at that time we were like $9.5 trillion of borrowing. Today we're 31. Are you telling me things are better today? This is Standard & Poor's report from 2011. They downgraded United States debt because we did not take our debt seriously. We did not take it seriously how we were going to manage it into the future. Here we are, a decade plus later. Things are dramatically worse. We've now hit the inflection period of baby boomers moving into their benefit cycle, and we have no way to pay for it. We lie constantly because we are terrified to tell the truth. But I will argue, and this is, I just wish I could get more of my brothers and sisters around here to make this argument. It's not about the stressor of the debt ceiling. The ultimate stressor here is if we get downgraded. If the world starts to look askance at U.S. debt and saying, well, we want a premium for buying their bonds because they're not taking it seriously. They're going to have to set off a huge inflationary cycle to devalue their dollar, so in the future they're paying back that debt with devalued dollars. You don't think we're going to walk into a downgrade? And do understand the law. There's lots and lots and lots of laws around this country that this state pension system, this retirement system, if you get 2 downgrades out of the 4 big rating agencies, if you get 2 of them, they can't even buy U.S. sovereigns. This is 2011. Things are dramatically worse. You don't think we're getting looked at on how unserious we are about, and yet, once again, it's debt ceiling fights, stressors, however you want to politely phrase it, are the only time we've done something rational around here. You know, I don't know if I just need to buy the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg subscription or something for my brothers and sisters on the left to read what's going on and understand we are going to be punished unless we take this seriously. So let's go back to some of the very basics. Why do we care so much about the debt and what's going on? I've been using the same board, and I need to get an updated one. I just hate to spend the ink printing another one. Ignore 1965. I need you to look at, this is 2022. Take a look at this pie. Do you see right here the green? That's domestic spending. Do you see over here the blue? That's all of defense. Understand, in 9 years, if you came to me and said, David, I need you to balance the budget in the 10-year window. In 9 years, you can get rid of every dime of defense, every dime of discretionary. And let me define discretionary. Discretionary is functioning everything you think in government. It's the Park Service, it's the FBI, it's the White House, it's the Supreme Court, it's Congress. Yeah, maybe applaud for that. But all government is gone. The only thing that's left is what we call mandatory. It's the benefits. It's your Social Security, it's your Medicare, it's Medicaid, it's veterans benefits. 9 years, all government is gone, as you know it. You still have to borrow a couple $100 billion. And in that same year, the Social Security Trust Fund is gone. In that same year, seniors take a 25% cut to their Social Security check, and the immorality of this government, we just doubled senior poverty. But yet I had a president get behind that podium at the beginning of this year and basically say, promise you won't talk about Social Security and Medicare. He basically sentenced seniors in this country to doubling senior poverty. Because we're all running around here terrified to talk about it, yet it happens. Go look at the CBO report, which is now functionally 8.5 years, less than 9 years. Social Security Trust Fund is gone. This inflationary cycle kicks up and the COLA keeps as high as it is, it could be gone in 8 years. And at that moment, you double senior poverty. That's the immorality the left is handing us. And they walk around here and pretend like they care. Care by your actions, not by your words. That's almost a cultural difference we have between the right and the left. We want to be judged by what we do, not by our virtue signaling. Because you can't turn virtue signaling into policy. So let's actually walk through, and I did this chart. It's really hard to read, but I'll try to walk through. So okay, I do these floor speeches every week, and I know, I almost sound like an accountant on excessive caffeine. But at some point, the math always wins. So let's actually walk through some of the inbound we get from people who will watch the video or talk about this. And there's one woman who over and over and over and over says, if we just didn't have your wages, we got rid of all the wages of Congress and your pension, we could balance the budget. And you read it and you wonder, is it just an insane bot or someone that's off their meds? But so we're going to walk through some of these brilliant suggestions we get. That would be, we put it on this chart. Get rid of all of the U.S. Congress and the Senate too, plus the pensions, plus the salaries, just it's gone. You basically covered 18 to 19 minutes of borrowing for an entire year. 18 to 19 minutes for borrowing. Okay, let's look at a couple of the other favorite hits. Let's just get rid of every dime of foreign aid. Every dime of foreign aid is about 17 days of borrowing, and that's in this last year. Understand, by the end of this decade, it's no longer 17 days, it's basically like 9 days, because the debt is going up so much because it's mostly it's almost all healthcare is the growth of the debt. So last year, we got rid of every dime of foreign aid, and we got rid of 17 days of borrowing. Now you may say, fine, if that's your policy, but you got rid of only 17 days of borrowing an entire year. Well, what if we just got rid of all the 2017 tax reform and pretended it didn't change all the growth effects and all the companies that moved their book of business back to us and their IP and all those things? This is one of the Democrats' favorite points. You should get rid of the 2017 tax reform. Okay, look here, it takes care. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days of borrowing. Getting rid of the entire 2017 tax reform got rid of 12 days of borrowing. That's what this brain trust around here right now proposes to the American people. You are lied to because we are terrified for you to understand how bad the math is. And this goes on and on. I mean, we could actually do a 50% income tax. Just start with 50% income tax, meaning if you're in California, we're basically with your state tax, if you're a higher income earner, you're in the 70s. Great. Love California. 50% income tax. Basically, it takes care of about 5.5 weeks of borrowing. 50% income tax. It shows you how absurd many of these suggestions are. One of my favorite ones is go to a 70% income tax for people that make $10 million or more. 70% income tax, $10 million more. It takes care of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of borrowing. Are you starting to get the point here? That the suggestions that keep being thrown out and people pretend this is real. They're not. They're not. The primary driver of our debt between today and 30 years from now. You're approaching almost $120 trillion of debt 30 years from now. 75% of that debt is the shortfall of Medicare. 25% is if we take Social Security and backfill it. It's demographics. We have, 67 million of us who are baby boomers. And every day we wait, it gets dramatically more difficult to fix. And I have an entire side here that cares so much more about winning the next election because we've lied to our voters for so long. If we get rid of waste and fraud and foreign aid, we'll be fine. Come on, look at the math. It's not that hard of math. Download the CBO reports. Download one of the Social Security actuary reports. They're not that hard to read. But stop making things up. And here's the primary driver, and I know this makes people upset when I show it, but it's the reality. And I want to make sure people understand this board. Percentage of people age 65 or over relative to the prime working age. So there's this whole body of economics that basically says, hey, people between 25 and 65, that's their prime working years. That's their productivity years, when they pay taxes, do family formation. And I've done presentations on the collapse of family formation, which is just making a mess of our future economics. But how many people are 65 and older as a ratio compared to those who are in their prime working age? And you got to understand, we're already basically here. We're already crossing over to 40% of the population. So 40% will be 65 and older compared to the number of population that's in the prime working age. That is the math. That population has earned benefits. We made a societal promise. We promised Medicare. We promised Social Security. Now we got to figure out how to pay for it. But understand, we're right here. We're 2023. We're right now 38. We're about in, looks like in 2028, just a couple years, we crossed 40%. And then as you start to get in, another 25 years, you're up to 46% of the population is 65 and older, and compared to how many you have in the prime working age. Now, this is a combination of baby boomers and the fact that fertility rates functionally started collapsing in the early 90s, and we didn't want to talk about it. So now I'm going to show the couple boards that enrage people. But yet the math has been vetted and vetted and vetted and vetted. So board one. This board now is already a couple years old. The new scoring, I'm just too cheap to print another board, it's not $116 trillion of borrowing, it's 128, so almost 130. 75% of the borrowing over the next 30 years, Medicare. 25% of the borrowing is if we backfill Social Security plus their interest costs. The rest of the budget is calculated to have a positive balance. meaning if we hold discretionary for that 30 years, basically in the formula that's already in law today, this is the law as it is today, just the shortfall in Medicare is somewhere between $80 to $90 trillion during that 30 years. And yet, I've had town halls where I go, how many of you would raise your hand if I would just give you back every dime you put into Social Security and the dimes you put into the Medicare trust fund? Would you take that? And a bunch of the people raised their hands. We should take that deal as a society because most people don't realize what the actual underlying math is. So this is for a couple. Social Security, you would have made so much more if you'd been allowed to put some of that money in the market. But let's be honest, AARP, the Democrats, others, back when George W. Bush proposed it, went to war, they crushed the idea. Now we're 20-some years later, and we look back and go, we were idiots for not actually doing it. Your life would be dramatically more secure. Your retirement would be dramatically more secure if you hadn't given it to the trolls who fought it. But the basic math on Social Security, this couple will have paid $625,000. That's the mean over a 40-plus quarter work life. You're going to get back $698,000. So what is that? $72,000 spiff you get. So you functionally get your money back from Social Security. It's not a great rate of return, but you get it back. But what people don't understand is the primary driver of U.S. sovereign debt is Medicare. That couple will have put in about $161,000 into Medicare taxes. The Medicare trust fund only pays 38, 40% of the Medicare bills. The rest comes right out of the general fund. So you put in $161,000 in your work life. This is for the average couple. You get back $522,000, and this number has gone up dramatically because of medical inflation. We just haven't had the time to recalculate it. It's this differential right here is the primary driver of U.S. sovereign debt. And I've done this in groups, and I get booed for the math. You get booed. And you're going, but it's a calculator, it's math. Are we that terrified of the truth? And understand, the wheels are coming off already. In the first 7 months of this fiscal year, entitlement spending is already up 11%. That's particularly driven because Medicare costs in the first 7 months of this year look like they've gone up about 16% because healthcare inflation really almost doubled the base inflation from this, from all the spending the Democrats did when they were in charge. But last month, receipts, revenues started to collapse. Capital gains taxes have crashed. So understand, when we did the calculations last month, 7 months into this fiscal year, our costs on entitlements are up 11%, and our receipts, our tax revenues are down 10%. That's why if you actually pull out the Treasury tables and read them and do the math and add them together, you are today about heading towards 1.7 trillion borrow, and assuming that the rest of the fiscal year is normalized. If it stays on the particular path, that number may be a few $1 trillion higher. I mean, you may be getting up to 1.9. God forbid if we're having a 2-year. Because the reason I'm talking about this is we are hitting numbers of borrowing we weren't supposed to hit for another decade and a half. There's this concept called fragility. Everything is fine and wonderful in life and our bonds, and everyone's willing to buy our debt until they're not. And that moment you have that failed bond auction, the moment you actually have this starting to happen where receipts are crashing and your costs are going up, and the rest of the world sees that and says, maybe we don't buy U.S. bonds this time. And the moment you hit that inflection, if U.S. rates for the next 25 years are 2 points higher than we had over the previous decade, at the end of that 25 years, every dime of tax receipts goes just to pay interest. You want to know what default looks like? That's what default looks like. It's not the clown show we're having around this place where people run around pretending their hair is on fire. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, I know it's a little agitated, far too much caffeine. This is important. We need to understand the math. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.